All right, John King is right over there. Good morning, John.
Hey, good morning, Peter.
There he is, the fabulous John King, who, by the way, your beard is looking more distinguished every day, I got to tell you.
And by distinguished, you mean
old.
Savage. Yeah. That's because I haven't shaved for a couple days. And
No,
just kind of letting it go.
Just a few little gray hairs in there. That not that you need that for wisdom or anything.
Oh, no.
Just ask me.
I think there's stress from the constant tirade of insults I receive.
You receive? How about the insults that you give?
Well, that's why you have so many more than me.
I know. All right, well, we have a special guest waiting on the phone. We could put our squabbles aside and visit with Doug Campbell, who's an independent candidate for Congress. Doug, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Peter.
And listen, tell us a little bit. Now, I have never, John's already spoken with you, but I have never met you before. So if you wouldn't mind telling all of our listeners, this is your first time on Talkback, all our listeners about Doug Campbell. Who are you, where do you live, and why are you running for Congress?
Well, that's a tall order to summarize, but between now and your next advertisement, I'm sure. But I'll give it a shot.
Well, we only have 90 minutes, Doug. So
All right. Well, I was born and raised in Bozeman. I'm a fourth generation Montanan. My ancestors on my mother's side were founders of original founders of Livingston and Bozeman. They had a coal mine up Trail Creek here and provided coal for the university when it was in its infancy. Currently, I'm an electrical engineer. I work for an electrical company in Texas, although I'm very pleased to be able to work most of the time from my home here in Bozeman. I was brought up and raised here in Bozeman. I went away to college and was in Arizona and working all around the country for several years. I returned back to Bozeman 7 years ago, and I've been here since. Been active in the community, and there's nothing like being at home.
Well, tell us about your family, if you don't mind.
Sure. My wife Barb is pretty much a stay-at-home mom, although she's branching out now that the kids are getting a little older. I've got two boys. Well, I got four kids. My stepdaughter lives here in Bozeman. She's 27. My oldest son is 26. He's still down in Phoenix. And my next son is 11, and my youngest son is 9. Just got them off to school this morning before I called in.
So you are a busy dad.
I'm a busy dad. Between my work schedule, I work probably about 70 hours a week at my main job. Between my other jobs I have around here in Bozeman, that's another 10 hours, plus then parenting and baseball and schoolwork and all that.
So you're running for Congress.
No one can say I'm not busy.
You're running for Congress because you want the rest.
I need a job with lots of vacation.
That may very well be, yes.
All right. So Doug, thank you for sharing that information. I'm sure appreciate it.
Yeah, but I wanted you to go into a little bit about why you want to run for Congress. Give us some of the motivation there, because you're sitting at home with all these kids, a 70-hour-a-week job. What's the motivation to go to Washington, D.C. and hang out with all those cool cats?
Oh, that lovely crowd, yes.
Yeah. with all the fighting and kicking and screaming that's going on right now, yeah.
Well, I'll do my best.
Okay.
I got involved really kind of be aware of politics. Of course, I'm 53, so I was born before Kennedy's assassination. I lived through the Nixon years and the Ford years and Carter years, and was very aware of all that was going on politically and socially then, but didn't feel much a part of it. I first took action in my late 20s. I started working for John McCain's primary campaign in 2000. For those that remember, he was running a campaign he labeled the Straight Talk Express, and his entire platform was based on campaign finance reform.
Now, this was in Arizona, right?
No, this is primary.
It was in Arizona. That's correct. Oh. But he was running primary for president.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, ironically, the very thing that he was running against, the Republican Party, had just threw all sorts of money to his competitors to kind of drown him out of the race, and his primary bid was quashed by the very thing that he was running against. And so even back then, when I was in my 20s, I was aware that money in politics was just really a negative influence to allow us to form the best government we could have. And I've been of that mindset ever since. I had been registered Republican up until 2000, but once I saw those shenanigans, I realized that the parties themselves were part of the process, part of the political monetary corruption, and so I have been independent ever since.
So, for you, is any association with money just guilt by association? I mean, why is money? Why is money bad?
No, not at all. Money, I believe, is only bad when we use it in place of speech. And when an individual uses money in place of speech, that's probably fine. I think that's constitutionally protected. There's a lot of case law that protects that. I'm not sure that it's beneficial. I mean, I think that it certainly makes things unfair. There's a 14th Amendment argument against money being equal to speech. But when it becomes bad is when we can't trace back a voice, when money becomes anonymous, becomes an anonymous voice. When we know that, say, a particular candidate gets $20,000 from a particular individual to further their cause, we know who that is. That's on the record. But when we have 501c4 public action corporations who can collect lots and lots of small donations or very large donations, and then put them to not necessarily to a candidate's cause, but we've turned it into a situation where they can effectively smear a campaign of another candidate, without naming the candidate's name, and that has definitely gotten out of control. In this very election, we have, I think, just on the recent FEC filings, there's more than $12 million in this election, $160,000 a day, and that is a new record for Montana. That number just keeps going up and up and up. And as long as we equivocate money with getting someone elected, I think that we're going to continue to get I shouldn't say the least optimal. We're not going to be seeking out the best qualified candidates.
Okay, we're up against our first break, Doug. We also have Chuck waiting on the line to visit with you. We also have two other lines open. Oh, well, Chuck is gone.
It looks like Chuck just hung up right when he was about to go on.
Anyway, so we will, Chuck, if you want to call back, we'll get you on after the break. Or we have three other lines open if you'd like to visit with independent congressional candidate Doug Campbell. We'll be on back right in just a moment. Hey, thanks for joining us on Talkback. It's the Thursday edition, and we love to talk politics on this show. So that's one of the reasons why our award-winning show producer, John King, has gotten Doug Campbell on the air with us. So we got started with a little bit about campaign finance, and now you, I understand, have taken a rather unusual path in trying to let folks know how serious you are about this, right?
I have for this campaign, and I'm not positive that I'll try again. But for this campaign, to put my money where my mouth is, I am taking absolutely no donations. I think it's important for a candidate to really use speech as speech and stand on his own 2 feet, or his or her own feet, and make his point known through the free channels. Your show being a very, very gracious opportunity to do that.
And free. Yeah. I guess my biggest questions for you is, this is such a big, important thing for you. But I mean, just personally, I just see the world differently, and campaign finance, this issue isn't a big one for me. So I guess I'm kind of asking you to sell me on it. When I look at American campaigns, the richest candidate, the one that has the most money pumped into the campaign, doesn't always win. Hillary Clinton's a great example of that.
You're correct. It's not always win. But there is a great correlation between the amount of money, because typically that money is spent on speech, on media. I think it's the candidate generally that gets the most media. Sometimes the media runs with a sensational story or something and can influence the value of the money being spent on that speech.
Sure. So how would a candidate in today's modern age, with media having such a powerful force in the way that the candidates reach the public, if the media were to oppose a candidate, how would the candidate ever come back at them and try to rival them with speech if they weren't able to put money into their campaign?
Well, again, there's another issue, a separate issue, is if the media opposes the candidate, and that is certainly the media's right. The media generally is privately owned, and that's problematic.
But I see. It seems to me that the way that you get around that is to give candidates money, allow them to raise funds, and to challenge the media with their own spending.
And again, as long as we know where the money is coming from, there's no issue. Money. Again, there's lots of case law that shows that money is speech, and I would say that if you want to speak out or support a particular candidate's speech by investing in the campaign, absolutely do that. But I think what we want to do is make sure that we can see where those influences are coming from. I mean, are those all small dollar amounts coming from the candidate's own district, or is that money coming from outside the district, trying to rig the system inside of districting? Or in our case, there's more than $5 million being sent from. More than $5 million of corporate money being sent from out of state, let alone the small private donations that are coming from out of state for both candidates.
Well, now, Doug,
to me, that's.
I was going to say,
go ahead.
To John's point just a minute ago, if you remember during the last gubernatorial campaign, Greg Gianforte spent over $5 million of his own money on a losing campaign. So it doesn't really, it doesn't really correlate to the fact that the more money you spend, the more success you have. And he just loaned himself $1 million for this campaign.
Yes, and again, because we know where that money's coming from, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
So it's not the money; it's the secrecy to you. Is that it?
Well, precisely. That is the worst aspect of it. Ideally, in a representative democracy, I think we want to have candidates who are truly representative of the electorate. And when we get money involved, as long as we know where all that money's coming from and people are speaking in representative ways, we can really have a representative democracy. But when it is large donors that we don't know of, then it's not possible for us to be assured, to have faith in the process that gets us a candidate who really will represent us.
Real quick, a while ago, J.K. Rowling, very famous author, Harry Potter series, wanted to write a book under a different name. So she took on a pseudonym and published this book, kind of, I think, for herself to see how her writing would perform without her name attached to it. I assume that you think freedom of speech and freedom of anonymity is okay for a writer. Do you agree?
Yes, absolutely.
So if freedom of speech and anonymity can go out in the form of a written piece of work, why can't it go out in a written piece of work that has a political end?
Well, because you're getting down to the crux of the point, which is I believe that political speech is a very special kind of speech. In the same way that we have ruled certain types of speech to be hate speech, which essentially manipulative or dangerous, political speech has ramifications above and beyond the type of speech that J.K. Rowling was making.
Now I agree with you that political speech is a special kind of speech, but under the auspices of the constitutional framers, what they were protecting when they wrote the freedom of speech, I think exactly was political and religious speech. And the freedom of anonymity is pretty clear in the early days of,
especially with those pamphlets that were issued, that they had to remain anonymous so that the British government wouldn't come back and hang them.
Agreed.
Does that make sense?
Yes, agreed.
So anonymity is, in my opinion, and the opinion of many others, is protected.
Well, I think you're right. It is protected, but I'm making a case against that. I'm making a case against the amount of anonymity that we currently have is problematic in the current campaign finance
Someone
system.
who is not anonymous is you, Doug. You have all of our lines filled. You have rock star status.
Yes.
Lots of people want to talk to you.
Absolutely.
So we are going to open up the phone lines in just a second and let them ask you questions, okay?
Sure.
Hey, we've got a quick break, so Pete and Marilyn and Mike are all waiting to visit with Doug Campbell, and we'll get you guys on in just a moment. Talk back, rolling right along. We're visiting with independent congressional candidate Doug Campbell, who's on the phone right now. So let's get right to the phone lines and folks who want to visit with you. So Pete, you called first. You're on with Doug Campbell. Go ahead.
Good morning. I'd like to address this campaign finance. You know, it's a game that they play back there. They real laws to change it. What they need to do, in my opinion, is just set a limit at different levels for the different races. Period. Can't spend more than that if in kind money or cash or whatever. You don't care where it comes from. You hit that limit, you're done spending. And you know who lobbies against such an action? The media, big TV companies.
Well, don't forget us radio stations. We make some money too on this deal, you know.
So it's the dollar that's ahead of the system.
Yeah. All right, Pete.
Thanks.
Thanks for the. What do you think about that, Doug?
Pete, thank you. That is certainly one of the solutions that is on the table. I've heard many solutions to this, which is creating a limit. We've heard Mark Wick's suggestion that we tax it. We've heard other people calling for public campaign finance so that qualified candidates get an allotted amount of media time on TV, radio, whatever it be, that we essentially allocate fair access to the system. And so I agree with your point. There are ways to make this so that we have equal speech. Because again, I think political speech is a special kind of speech that has such influencing impact over our lives that we need to think of it in a special way. And if we're going to have freedom of speech in the First Amendment and equal application of the law in the 14th Amendment, then we really kind of need to demand that our political speech is as open and equal as possible.
Doug, I want to get at least one more call, and we have a hard break here in just a minute or two. So, Marilyn, you're on with Doug Campbell. Go ahead.
Good morning. So, Doug, you sound like a nice guy, but unfortunately, there's a lot of people, and I'm going to say on the left, that they would love it if the campaign donations were in full view and names were recorded, because they would attack that person and destroy their lives, even though they claim to be so tolerant. Just look what happened to that guy from Missoula down in California or Oregon, wherever he was from, that supported the one man, one woman. They went after him. They got him fired because he dared to donate to that campaign.
Firefox CEO?
Yeah, so we absolutely have to let the campaign donations remain anonymous.
Okay, Marilyn. Thanks for the call. All right, let's try to get one more call in before we have to take our hard break here. Mike, you're on with Doug Campbell. Go ahead.
Okay, Doug, make it quick. Give me 5 reasons why I should vote for you, and not because you're born in Montana. That doesn't carry any weight with a Minnesota brush shape. And one other question. Have you ever done door-to-door salesman?
Mike, yes, I have done door-to-door salesman, and I agree with you that being a Montanan is not related to birthplace. I believe that if you are committed to Montana, and it's people that you can be a Montanan.
No, all right. Now the 5 reasons, please, quick.
All right, let him go, Mike.
Well, you're catching me off guard here, but
we've got about 40 seconds. Go ahead.
Okay, about 6 seconds apiece. I'm a regular working guy. I'm not going to take my own personal opinions to Washington. I pledge to only take Montanans' interests to Washington. I am in this for my family and my kids and for Montana's future. That's the best I can come up with in 30 seconds, Mike. I should have had a list for you. Thank you very much for calling.
That's okay. We've got another.
We can get the next two after the break.
Absolutely. We're going to come right back. Stay with us. Doug Campbell will be with us for the next hour. We'll be right back. Welcome, everybody. It's hour number 2 of Talkback, brought to you by, and I love saying that, brought to you by Karis Property Management, Selway Armory, Maverick Motorsports, and Bulls Eyewear. All right, we are not only on the radio, we're also on Facebook, and we have some questions and comments.
A real quick one from Kitty. She just wants to know what our guest, by the way, our guest is Doug Campbell,
right,
independent candidate for Congress, running for the U.S. House seat vacated by Mr. Ryan Zinke, who's now your Interior Secretary. But anyway, Kitty wants to know how close you still are to McCain, and she wants to also know your views on veterans.
Well, I don't think there's anyone that has a dim view of veterans. I think that we certainly could have a dim view of the services that we've made available to them after their service. That certainly needs to be improved. I've never been terribly close to Senator McCain, but I can't say that I agree with everything that he's done since I worked with on his campaign. But he is certainly one of the more reasonable, rational, carefully thought senators that I think that we have, and I appreciate his service.
All right. Peter, you had a question.
Well, actually, when you talk about John McCain, if any Republican has been staunchly and fiercely opposed to President Trump, it's John McCain. So do you share that view as well?
Well, I think that everyone is entitled to their opinion. My personal opinion is that the media is pretty harsh on our new president. I support the president in everything that he's trying to do, so long as he stays, on the right side of the law. If there's been any laws broken, and I think that the investigation going on is a reasonable and it's a good thing to do. If there's any suspicion that the president is carrying around, it's going to damage his ability to get his job done. So we should get to the bottom of everything that is being thrown at him, and either clear his name or not. Everyone really should support the president, even if they don't like him personally. The work that he does is really what matters.
Well, here's the reason I asked that question is because one of the things that I have seen, and I'm not the most astute political person, John, much more so than I am, but everything that has happened since the day that Donald Trump was inaugurated, it just seemed that there was this organized, and it's becoming more highly organized every day, this effort to put roadblocks in the way of everything he wants to do, that he promised to do when he was campaigning. And I don't think we have ever seen this kind of vitriol against a president, at least in my mind. I'm an old guy, so I don't ever remember seeing this kind of vitriol. Even against George W. Bush in the middle of the Iraq War wasn't this bad. So it just seems like this man can do nothing to please a very large group of people, and it seems they will not rest until he's gone. So I'm wondering, if you were in Congress, would you join that crowd, or would you be independent?
Well, I'm absolutely going to be independent. I'm going to be on Montana's side. Again, I'm not going to take my own views. That I think when we hire a representative, or when we elect a representative, it's very important that they lay aside their own personal bias and do the job that they are supposed to do, and report back to their the group of managers, which is the electorate, and do exactly what Montana voters want.
Doug, that sounds really good, but to me it sounds a little bit naive Because one of the reasons, well, no, hold on, one of the reasons we elect an individual is because we agree with the things that they stand for. If all you stand for is whatever you tell me I'll do, then I don't know where you stand. You see what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do, and I hope you don't. I'm definitely not being naive. I think that we have disengaged from the political process, we as citizens. And if I stand back and I just become a voter again for a moment, I believe that I should not just expect to find a candidate that matches my views as closely as possible, and do my job by going to the polls and electing them, and then push the autopilot button and hope that for the next 2 to 6 years that my representative is going to do exactly, that's going to stay on my page and do exactly what I said. I think it's important that we continue to engage with our representatives throughout the entire term of office. And if people are making a decision based on me, based on my views today, there's new information that's going to come out in 3 months that's going to change the views of the electorate, and I'm going to need to be able to follow their views as well. So if I just stuck with my hardline views all the way through my term, I would not be doing the best job I could for Montana.
So that being said, I've been to your website multiple times. I've read through it, and I walk away.
About the Facebook page?
No, you're. I think it's Doug for MT.
Yes. Okay. It's just right. My bio. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there's not a lot of there. I mean, I get your biography, and there's a platform of I guess not really a platform, but the things that you'll be independent from. But it's really hard for me to understand what you are for, what sorts of ideas you want to represent when you get to, like, for example, one of the basic ones for me is, does this individual want to see a stronger centralized federal government or a stronger decentralized system of state governments? I don't know where you sit on that spectrum.
Well, again, these are my personal views, which I would set aside if the majority of Montana's differed from that.
So,
my personal view is that
go ahead.
My personal view is that we have that the federal government has grown beyond its original intended mandate. The federal government should be providing for the common defense, handling matters of state, enforcing, protecting personal liberties as granted in the Constitution,
and the borders,
and handling all matters of interstate commerce, or in fact, all matters of interstate communication and business whatsoever. Outside of that, some of the most important laws are handled by the states. When we talk about public education, a lot of people think that public education is mandated by the federal government. Well, that was a compulsory education, which I think we can all agree has been a boon for the country. Took 60 years for all of the states to adopt it, but it's enforced by the individual states. That's how I think that we need to have any social movement needs to be done at the state level.
Yeah, hang on right there.
Yeah,
we're up against a break, so hang on. But every 10 minutes we take a break. So, and we have 3 lines open. Doug's bringing up some very interesting things. We'd like to know what you folks think. Our very wise and wonderful audience here on Talkback. We have 3 lines open at 721-1290, also our Facebook page, and we will continue in a moment. All right, we're back on Talkback. I'm Peter Christian, of course, John King right over there. Doug Campbell joining us from Bozeman. He's an independent candidate for Congress, right in the middle of talking about all sorts of different topics here. In lieu of your phone calls, which we'd love to have, it's 721-1290.
And one of the things that we just left off the last bit was Doug was expressing his view of the federal system, our system of federalism. And you explicitly said that you thought that it had that we were past what we were originally set out to do. I'm paraphrasing here, but that we were beyond basically the constitutional mandate of what things should look like at this point in time.
A long time ago.
But you also explained your personal position as something separate from what you might vote as. And I guess my question is, do you think we would be better off as a pure democracy? That 51% of Montanans should have sway over whatever pops up in Congress? Because that's what the system sounds like that you're trying to create here, where a majority of Montanans get your vote. And
well,
even against your own understanding of the Constitution, perhaps.
Well, no. As a congressman, I think my first duty is to support and uphold the Constitution. But absolutely, anything that's not that does not break the law that Montanans want to do as a majority, and it's really a shame. I don't believe that we'd ever have a situation where Montanans, at least the Montanans that I've been fortunate enough to meet, the vast majority of them have so much in common that there's very few topics where we would come to a 50-50 override or a 51-49. But yes, that is the nature of democracy. A pure majority just takes one more vote than the other side, and that would be my duty, is to support that majority.
All right, now that brings up an interesting point. In order to get a majority of views, you have to hear from people. How are you going to know where the majority actually lies if you have maybe 10 or 20 or maybe 1,000 people that call you every day, while there are 900,000 that don't have time to call you? You're only going to hear that voice.
And not only that, you have some people that are just apathetic,
right?
And that don't
care.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, the folks who are apathetic, that don't care, I hope to engage them simply by continuously informing them of what's going on in my office. If they remain apathetic, then an abstention from the voting process is a valid action.
Then that's on them, right?
That is on them. My plan would be to take advantage of my background in communications and computers, and make every possible way available for constituents to reach me. Whether that be phone, and I'm willing to take the same phone call over and over again. That's fine. I'd rather hear more from one person, if they're just really adamant about a subject, than to have someone feel like that their congressman is out of touch. But I think that I'm uniquely qualified to take advantage of some of the new technologies that we have to keep in touch with the electorate.
Right. Now, something we talked about during the break, and I want to bring this up to you. You had mentioned that you were a contributor to NPR, National Public Radio, right?
Yes.
Which is fine. Everybody has a right to do that. My question to you, I guess, is: do you favor or do you oppose President Trump's proposal to pull funding from not only the National Endowment for the Humanities, but also for the National Corporation for Public Broadcasting? And if you do oppose it, why?
Yes. Again, these are my personal views, but I believe that especially the National Endowment for the Arts has a greater, broader public benefit to the overall underlying society. There are some people who simply would not be exposed to that level of culture were it not subsidized by the government. Now, absolutely, we need to take a look at how much we can afford. I'm a very fiscal conservative, and if we can't afford something, we can't pay for it. But just to take a blanket pen to a line item and scratch it out entirely, I think is not possibly not thinking through the entire ramifications of that decision. If it's done with reason, then absolutely. Now, for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, I can see weaning that off gradually. It's been a good thing, but media has changed dramatically since the Corporation for Public Broadcasting was created.
Yes, since Sesame Street,
people
right?
Consume media. Pardon?
I said since Sesame Street, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And so people consume media in very different ways, and so our contribution to that corporation needs to change similarly. We can't just always have the same line item as our culture and technologies can change out from underneath of it.
And I think we are rapidly, and perhaps even more rapidly than anyone may realize, getting away from, giant cable companies and Dish Network and DirecTV and all that, to the point where people may be able just to stream whatever they want, whenever they want to see it, on whatever device they have. And so when it comes to major networks like the Corporation for Public Broadcasting or NBC or ABC or CBS, they're scrambling to try to keep up with where the public is already heading.
Exactly, and that's why I have a different viewpoint on Corporation for Public Broadcasting subsidies. There is because it really is a different animal compared to the National Endowment for the Arts. The way that public consumes media has changed, and if we can find ways to make arts and education available to the disenfranchised who simply would not be exposed to those benefits in any other way, I don't see that as being a bad thing. I think that shores up the foundations of our society.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. Come right back. 721-1290 is our number. 1-800-568-5309 or our Facebook page. Carol, we're going to your call right after this break. We have two other lines open, visiting with independent congressional candidate Doug Campbell, and we will continue in a moment. At the Thursday edition of Talkback, a little bit of sunshine out there, very welcome. John King over there. I'm Peter Christian, independent candidate for Congress. Doug Campbell joining us on the phone. All right, let's get Carol on the line. Been waiting very patiently. Carol, good morning. You're on Talkback. Hi.
Hi. Thank you very much. I just wanted to share a little experience that I have had in working for a large employer. I participated repeatedly in teamwork training. And in that kind of training, we often did survivalist type just an exercise where we all got to individually write down priority of what we would take in order to survive if our plane had crashed or whatever, and then as a group get together and do it again. And repeatedly, the group consensus always won out and proved to be more accurate and better solution than any one individual. It's not always true, but 99% of the time, and statistically in research you can find that this is true.
So what's your point, Carol?
This might have been the impetus behind our founding fathers deciding on a democratic representative government. And while I believe that it is very important to know the person, the values, and the character of the person we are electing, I do believe that a democratic representative government is important where the individual who is elected has the opportunity and may very well value setting aside their own opinion for the opinion of the group, as it can sometimes be way more accurate than the individual.
Okay, thanks for your call.
Thanks, Carol. So what do you think there, Doug?
Well, I've seen very similar studies, and groupthink is not always the best way, but in the vast majority of choices, in some situations, when you have many voices speaking, you come up with the best solution. Everything that we see in nature looks just like a bell curve, and we're talking about statistics, and it's only through that group speak that you find that 50th percentile where you're including the majority of the needs of the populace.
You're a parent,
and I agree.
Right?
Pardon?
You're a parent, right, Doug?
Absolutely, yes. I am a parent.
I want to do a quick parent example of a John Adams phrase, which is the tyranny of the majority. Now, I'm a parent too. My oldest is a daughter, and my youngest two are boys, 6 and 3 for the boys, and the daughter's 9. Actually, they all had birthdays this month, and I'm wrong on all those ages, but whatever. But anyway, you kind of get the spread here. So this comes up all the time as a parent for me. The boys want to get together and have something, And of course, the girl would lose out, or the oldest one to get together and do something, and of course, the youngest would lose out. And there's always, and this I think happens in the American public all the time, where a spending issue comes up, and one segment would get the benefit of that spending, and another wouldn't. Where this tyranny of the majority will play very strongly in the role of the U.S. House, and it'll be up to you or whoever gets the office to make some really tough decisions that sometimes would go against the majority of the people that you represent, for the fairness of the American public.
That is true, and again, majority rule is not always the best. I mean, you can't create a blanket rule that covers every situation. However, I think that, and again, going back to the bigger issue, is that we need to have a government that is more representative of the populace. And I don't think that we have anything close to that now, and I think that money has a lot to do with it. And that is my premise. And you said that my website's a bit sparse, but I think until we can get rid of or eliminate the corruption caused by the money and get back to a point where, in the Congress, we're lucky. Every 2 years we could have a whole new Congress. But in the Congress, I think we need to have a Congress that looks more like the American populace, and particularly it needs to have more females. I think we need to be advocating for females to run for office. I mean, to me it's just a travesty that so many congressmen and so many senators are making laws which affect what's a slight majority of the population. But yes, you're right. There are hard decisions, and if a hard decision had to be made that went against the majority, the best way to deal with that is to make sure that the constituents understand the full rationale behind a decision like that.
All right. Now, let me ask you this, and we'll take this question, and we'll go into a break, and you can answer when we come back, okay? You had just mentioned that possibly every 2 years we could have a new Congress, or every 6 years a new Senate, or every 4 years a new president, okay?
Yes.
How do you feel about term limits? Now, right now, the only ones that are term limited out are the president and the vice president. So, do you feel that there should be some sort of constitutional amendment to require term limits? And if so, how long? I mean, should a congressman serve only 3 terms or 4 terms, or a senator 2 terms? We'll be right back. I want to know what you think about that, because the whole idea of having a new Congress every 2 years is a little bit spooky, because you have a new Congress every 2 years. Nobody knows where the bathroom is.
Yeah.
So
Otherwise, you might have dinosaurs that live there forever, like we do.
I'm not talking about somebody staying for 50 years.
That's what happens.
Yeah, I know. Well, we'll be right back. Stay with us. All righty then. 721-1290 is the number. 1-800-568-5309. Doug Campbell, independent congressional candidate, joining us from his home in Bozeman, his home office, I should say. And Doug, I just asked you a little bit about term limits. So what do you think? Is that something that you've had a chance to cogitate on?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you asked the question, because I actually have a personal opinion on that even before you asked. But I would support term limits for senators and congressmen. I don't think that they need to be outrageous. There's no reason why a congressman or senator couldn't serve two or 3 or 4 terms. But at some point, having some turnover becomes more representative of the electorate. As you had alluded to during the break, is the incumbent advantage is huge, and when we just keep relying on that incumbent it gets back to the autopilot situation where the electorate becomes more disengaged with the process. With the Congress, 2-year terms, I think those are almost too short. What we end up with is a congressman who can really do the state's work for about 12 months. The rest of the time is re-election bid.
I think 12. I think 12 years of service for both the Senate and the House would be fair.
So you're thinking 2 terms for Senate and 6-4. That is absolutely reasonable. So I would support term limits. In the House, we have a better opportunity to remove a candidate that we don't feel is doing the job for us. But again, the incumbent advantage really begins to take a toll on the engagement of the electorate.
Okay, and so now our phones are starting to fill up. So let's jump right back into the phone lines here.
Thanks for calling, KGVO.
Marilyn, you are back. Quickly, what's on your mind?
Good morning. So character is a big issue to me, and a litmus test for me on a person's character is whether or not they believe that a baby is a person, a preborn baby, is a person and should be protected by law and have the right to life. Where are you at on that issue?
Okay, thanks, Marilyn.
Well, I think that issue needs to be defined by the states, just as many other social issues are. I don't think that's a federal government area, an area that the federal government is really allowed to weigh in on.
So you disagree with Roe v. Wade, then?
No, Roe v. Wade was a personal access issue. Was not a determination of life.
But it demands.
I think if we're going to determine personhood, it needs to be done at the state level.
Well, in effect, that decision defines non-personhood, because it demands access in every state.
It does demand access in every state, but it's really just it's a personal liberty decision, not a decision of the. It has no bearing on the rights of the unborn child. And so I think if we're going to tackle this issue, we need to do it at the state level. And at the state level, every single state needs to determine whether or not an unborn baby is a person. And once it is, then it becomes, it falls under the statutes of murder for that state. State by state, murder laws are enforced and defined and enforced state by state. That's where we need to define this issue as well.
Real quick, I just wanted to read. Earlier, I had mentioned that I had difficulty finding much information on your website, and you had mentioned that I'd said it was sparse. I just want to read for the listeners what your website says. And basically, it says an independent Montana needs independent representation in U.S. Congress, and then you have why, assuming why Doug Campbell. You write, independent from blind allegiance to any party line or party insider manipulation, independent from compromise of out-of-state corporate or dark money donations, and independent from self-serving interests of personal or family wealth. And then beyond that, it's your biography and a quick description of how you can vote for a write-in candidate in Montana.
Okay, so let's get back to the phone and say good morning to Candy. Candy, you're on with Doug Campbell. Go ahead.
Yes. I guess I want to touch one base concerning Maryland's question about where he stands. The Constitution of the United States does not have a death issuance clause in it anywhere. So to say that it's the right of the state to decide who lives and who dies, it's not in there anywhere. And the abortion is just flat out premeditated murder. But what I wanted to say, too, is that at first I thought he was talking about the Constitution and limited government, but I don't hear him saying he'll weigh the issues upon the supreme law of the land, the Constitution, and if he doesn't weigh every law that comes before Congress on that basis, then he's no different than anybody else. If you're not going to raise the issue of the Constitution as being supreme law, you can't help but hurt the citizens of America.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Candy. So do you want to respond, Doug, before we take a break? Go ahead.
Sure. As a congressman, my primary duty would be to support and uphold the Constitution. I am very much a constitutional rights person. The only place that the federal government deals with individuals is through the Constitution and the amendments. And so, absolutely, every single law. I think that one of the problems is we have a whole slew of laws on the books, both state laws and federal laws. In this position, I would be only overseeing or have influence on federal laws, but we have a bunch of laws on the books that we simply aren't enforcing. So we need to get to a point where we are enforcing all the existing laws uniformly and not just haphazardly. And we need to make sure that any law that we write has constitutional justification. There's where the Supreme Court comes in. That's out of my hands. That's a branch of government that's essentially intentionally opposed to the Congress. But absolutely, my stance is from the Constitution. That is where individuals have their strength in this country.
Okay, with that, we're going to take a quick break. Mark is waiting on the line. We have two other lines open. Pretty good conversation here with independent candidate Doug Campbell, so you want to take advantage of it. Like I say, he's not airing any commercials. You won't hear a Doug Campbell commercial on our radio station. But so if you want to visit with this gentleman who would like to be your congressman, this is the time to do it. 721-1290 is our number, and we'll be right back. Hey, this is Talkback, Western Montana's only live interactive radio talk show. Very interactive today because we're visiting on the phone from Bozeman, independent congressional candidate Doug Campbell. I'm Peter Christian. John King is over there. Now, we need to be faithful to Doug's schedule. He has to leave at about 9:45, so only a couple of minutes left. So, Mark, very quickly, what is your question for Doug?
Hey, Doug, I've listened to several of the candidates here on Talkback. It's the only talk show in Missoula. And I'm an independent. I've been an independent since I was the voting age. So I voted Democratic, Republican, even Ross Perot as independent presidential. And I wish you would have, because I got my mail-in ballot a couple weeks ago, and after listening to you today, I would have voted for you, but I can't get my ballot back. I mailed it in over a week ago. So make sure you're on these talk shows earlier.
I appreciate your support. I'm with you. I don't think
Thanks,
I've
Mark.
ever voted a straight ticket in my life. I think that it's very important for us as citizens to take a look at every candidate, how they, what type of integrity they have, and how committed they are to doing their job, which is to represent us. And I've been disappointed by some of the people we've ended up with in office who seem to have a completely different agenda than what I thought I was voting for.
Well, Doug, we have to let you go here. We got to let you go, but I'm going to give you 1 minute to make your stump speech. You're on the stump. You've got about 20,000 listeners out there. Why should we write in Doug Campbell?
Well, I represent what I think is the straight down the middle, and to me, the people that I've met in Montana, we have kids or grandkids. We like being outside. We enjoy the beautiful spaces that we have in Montana, and I'm in exactly the same spot. I am an average Joe guy. As you know, the reason I have to leave is I've got to go to my son's school to attend a band concert. I promised him I would attend his last band concert of the year, and with my work schedule being 70 hours a week or more, I've missed a couple of them, and I didn't want to break another promise. I'm a candidate of integrity. If you hear me say something, then you can count on it. There's no back agenda that I have. I make a fairly average income. I'm not famous. It's unfortunate that I couldn't get ballot access, or people would have had an opportunity to vote for me.
Right.
And again, without money in the process, I have a limited voice in the process, but staying true to my point is that money is not a benefit to the electorate. It's only a benefit to the candidate.
All right.
And I'm not going to stand on that stump.
Doug, it has been a pleasure, and we certainly wish you the best, whether you win or lose. Okay.
Thank you, Peter and John. It's been a great opportunity. Love talking to your guests.
You take care. All right.
All right.
Bye-bye. Best of luck to you. All right. So there you go.
All right. I think it's time to get some people riled up.
Okay. Go for it, John.
All right. This is a topic that is very close to home.
All right.
All right. So we had this shooter Tuesday. One of them's dead, and the other shooter, I should say alleged, but it's pretty obvious that these guys are the ones involved here. Lloyd Barris is in the Missoula County Jail right now, at least best of my knowledge. $2
million bail. Now here's the deal. Because there have been so many jurisdictions that have been gone through with all various crimes, he's going to have to travel to each of those jurisdictions, Silverbow County, Broadwater County, and go to justice court in each one and face charges from that county. So just so you know, that he's not going to be staying in Missoula, even though he's on $2 million bail here. They may do $1 million, they may do $5 million. Who knows what they're going to do in these other jurisdictions? So go ahead.
Right. So now the issue of Donald Trump comes into play.
All right.
Okay. So the Southern Poverty Law Center has noted some of this individual's activities on Facebook, et cetera, in the past.
That's right. And Alex Jones.
And they write, quote, "In recent months, Lloyd Barris, who has lived in Bakersfield, California, has posted assorted pro-Trump material and links to various anti-government and conspiracy theory websites, including InfoWars, hosted by arch conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, etc." And Randy on her Facebook page says, "The reason I post this is because if the shooter had been one of the black-wearing troublemakers seen at some of the demonstrations recently," he's talking about the Antifa group, "not only would have Trump already tweeted about it, Fox News would be running it as a feature story nightly. Condolences to the friends and family of the slain officer." So on the other side, right? They're looking at this guy, and I think it's probably true what he's saying. If it were true that this was one of these Antifa members, people would be talking about it on the other side of the aisle, right? As highlighting that the link between the ideology of a group and the extreme actions of the individual. And I guess my question for you, Peter, and for the audience is, how do you separate that stuff out? Because I do see it happening this way. When someone says, "I'm on the left," and then the next person says, "Oh, so you agree with the people rioting in Portland and tearing down police cars?" And
just go back to the Oklahoma City bombing. The individual involved there was a former military guy who was, very actually got into some of the white supremacy things that were going on there. And the talk radio, and he was very into talk radio. So there was a howling criticism against, well, we got to get rid of Rush Limbaugh. We got to get rid of any conservative talk radio because it could foment these type of individuals. So anyway, we're up against our last break. 721-1290 is our number. 1-800-568-5309. What do you think? What do you think about the tying of all these things together?
Well, it seems to me the really sickening thing about this is anytime one of these tragedies happens, there's this guilt by association ladder that the other side immediately tries to build to connect, an entire group of people with the actions of this one, and it's pretty sad.
Yeah. We're going to come right back in 1 minute. Love to hear what you think. And now I know whether you call them Antifa because they ran out of crayons before they wrote anti-fascist. Sorry. I was a little bit ignorant there. All right. So let's get to the phone. And
they're actually against Thai food.
Right.
They don't like
Emmett, you're on Talkback. Go ahead.
Oh, thanks for taking my call. Well, I agree. Let's see what's I'm having a little allergy attack here. I'm sorry if I sound like Hillary Clinton.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. But anyway, I completely agree with John King, the whole thing of lumping everybody together because of one ideology. This is what they use to try and attack conservatives. Absolutely. I mean, there are going to be nut jobs in every group or criminals in every group. I mean, 98% of the people that listen to Rush Limbaugh and Alex Jones are good law-abiding citizens. It's the 2% that make everybody else look bad, and they love to latch on to that.
Now, Emmett, will you extend the same grace to all Muslims?
I wouldn't. I'll tell you why. Because these terrorist attacks, these awful terrorist attacks that keep happening, they're almost always done by Muslims, one after the other after the other. They're in the Quran. They want to kill the infidel. That's their religion. That's what they did. That's their religion. That's their stated goal. So, no,
but you're still saying. I mean, it seems like you're being a little hypocritical here. It seems like you're saying that yes, I agree that there's these radical elements inside the Muslim group, and they're committing these horrible atrocities. Everybody knows this, and therefore every other Muslim is like that.
Well, most of them, because that is their ideology. That's just the Muslim religion is not a religion of peace. There are some Muslims that are good, but look at these awful atrocities, one after the other, after the other, after the other. In the Middle East, it's just on fire. Why? These groups like ISIS and Al Qaeda. That is the Muslim religion. That's just their ideology. That's in the Quran.
If that were true. If you wanted to follow that out to its logical conclusion, okay, then every Muslim would be out killing non-Muslims, and they're not.
Well, not everyone, but a lot of them are. But it's
no. A very
only 2%.
A very small minority of them are the ones that are causing all the problems, and unfortunately, the vast majority of Muslims, what are they supposed to do?
Interesting. But one thing I just before I defend on that, the Timothy McVeigh you're talking about,
right.
The Oklahoma City bombing.
Right.
I used to read in the Spotlight. I used to subscribe to the Spotlight. It was an independent newspaper. Now it's the American Free Press. They did stories that Timothy McVeigh was a government plant. He was a government operative blowing up Oklahoma City to make conservatives look bad. It was planned by the government.
Wow. And so he was willing to he was willing to go to the gas chamber for that. Is that
exactly
right?
Because the government ordered him to, and that's how he got his pay. It's a horrible government we have here.
Okay.
So, but yeah, just the vast thing is the government wants to destroy Alex Jones, and they would love to use this shooter to do that.
Okay.
Good conservatives like we are in Montana.
All right.
Like that.
So you think this shooter was a government plant?
The shooter, I don't think he was. I think he was just a nut job. But if we had facts to back up that he was a government shooter, a government plant, I would be seriously consider that.
Emmett, if you go to the story on our website and read the charging document against Mr. Barras, one of the things that he wanted to do, he wanted to die in that shootout. He was intending to be like his son, to die in that shootout. That was his intention, and it didn't work out that way.
Interesting.
So anyway, we got to move on.
All right.
Thanks for the call. So, all right. We got about 3 minutes left in the show. Mike, go ahead. You're on Talkback. Hi.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to John's comment on it being hypocritical to hold Muslims to a standard because the tiny percentage who actually commit terrorist acts.
Okay.
We don't want that done with conservatives or liberals, but I think you have to look at that in context. John, have you ever looked at the Pew International Poll of Muslim Attitudes?
I have, and it is very disturbing.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about people who, a large percentage of them believe that stoning adulteresses, who can be poor little girls who get raped, is an acceptable thing to do.
And even in some Western countries, there's some really disturbing. But my point my point still remains: a large majority is not everyone.
No, I agree. They're not everyone, but you can't look at Islam where you've got 40, 50, 60% of people who believe in horrible things, and say, well, we can't hold the other 40% responsible. We can't do that, but we have to at least have our eyes open that this is a religion, a theology, an ideology that has serious problems. You can't just say, oh, it's like Episcopalianism. There's 2 or 3 nuts, but the rest of them are great.
You're absolutely right. Ideologies do bear fruit in the real world, and I mean that goes for. I mean, it's obviously with Nazism.
Right.
It's true with communism. It's true with Islamism, and there is a little bit of overlap there, and sometimes with certain ideologies, a big overlap where some of the things we find abhorrent are sanctioned by the ideology.
And Mike, I'm so sorry.
And if I could just add, when we vet Muslim refugees or Muslim immigrants, we vet them for membership in a terrorist group. We vet, we're looking for that 1 or 2%, but we do not, by very much by design, we do not ask them, do you believe in honor killing? Do you believe in female genital mutilation? Do you believe in, stoning adulteresses? Because we consider that a religious test. And I do not want people moving in and living next to me who believe that they should kill their daughter if they date wrong.
All right. Well, Mike, thanks for the call.
Okay.
Appreciate it. And Jonathan, I'm really sorry. We have less than a minute left in the show, so I apologize we couldn't get your call on, but maybe we could do it on another open phone segment. I will not be here tomorrow. John King will be taking over. What's going on tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow we're going to be speaking with an expert on America's electrical grid and some of the risks that are posed by our shift to different energy, green energy, and some other sources. They open up the grid, but they also make it a little bit more dangerous. So he'll talk about that tomorrow.
Make it more vulnerable to attack. Maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah, like maybe it's easier to blow up a windmill or something like that.
No, we'll find out.
All right, we'll talk. You guys will talk about that tomorrow. I will see you on Monday. I'm going to try to get over to the Bernie event on Saturday if they'll let me in. You never know.
Peter's feeling the burn of not getting a response yet.
Have a great day, everybody.